I stood in that suffocating courtroom, watching my wealthy sister Vanessa dismantle my life for a few $1,000s she did not need. I thought this was just about greed until the heavy oak doors swung open. A man in a sharp black suit walked in, and the judge froze mid-sentence. In the terrified silence that followed, I realized my father's modest estate was never about the money. It was the fuse to a bomb that was finally about to detonate. The call came on a Tuesday morning while I was making coffee, the kind of gray, heavy Tuesday that seems to hang over Briar Glen for half the year. It was the hospice nurse. She was kind, professional, and brief. My father, Thomas Peterson, was gone. I did not drop the mug. I did not scream. I simply set the spoon down on the counter, exhaled a breath I felt like I had been holding for 6 months, and looked out the window at the wet pavement. I was 33 years old, and for the last 5 years, my life had been a series of slow revisions to accommodate the dying. First my mother, then the quiet intermission, and then the long, steep decline of my father. By noon, my older sister Vanessa had arrived. Vanessa did not drive herself. She was driven. A black sedan idled in the driveway of our childhood home, a modest 2-story colonial that needed painting, while Vanessa stepped out in a coat that likely cost more than the roof replacement I had been budgeting for. She lived in the city, 3 hours and a different universe away. She was 40, a partner at a logistics firm, and she moved through the world with the aerodynamic confidence of someone who never expected friction. She hugged me in the hallway. It was a firm, structured hug, the kind you give a client after closing a deal. I handled the arrangements. She pulled leather gloves off her fingers, one by one. I spoke to the funeral director. "We will do a closed casket. It is more dignified. And I have a team coming to catalog the house starting Thursday." I stood there, still wearing the oversized cardigan I had thrown on when the nurse called. "Thursday," I repeated. "He died 3 hours ago." "Vanessa." She looked at me, her eyes dry and clear. "Efficiency is the best way to manage grief. Claire, we need to secure the assets." That was the word that defined the next week. Assets. Not memories, not closure, not loss. Assets. Vanessa moved through the funeral like she was managing a corporate merger. She shook hands, she nodded at the right times, she ordered the flowers, and she checked her phone during the hymns. I sat in the front row, staring at the wood grain of the pew, feeling a profound, hollowing exhaustion. I had been the one sleeping in the chair next to his bed. I had been the one measuring out morphine and changing sheets. I had been the daughter who stayed. But as we stood by the graveside, I watched the way the neighbors looked at Vanessa. They saw the success, the polish, the authority. They saw the Peterson daughter who made it. I was just Claire, reliable, quiet, practical Claire, the one who never left. The real blow came 3 days later. We met at the office of Miles Harrow, the estate attorney. Miles was a fixture in Briar Glen, a man with a mustache that had been gray since the 80s, and an office that smelled of lemon polish and old paper. He had been my father's lawyer for 20 years. I sat in a leather chair that squeaked. Vanessa sat next to me, her posture perfect, a notebook open on her lap. Miles cleared his throat, adjusting his glasses. "Thomas wanted this to be simple," Miles said. He looked tired. He unfolded the document on his desk, the last will and testament of Thomas Peterson. I braced myself for the administrative details. I expected a 50-50 split. That was what Dad had always said. Fair is fair. Miles began to read. "To my daughter, Vanessa, I leave the sum of $50,000. Vanessa's pen stopped moving. The silence in the room became instant and physical, like the air had been sucked out. "To my daughter Claire," Miles continued, his voice steady, "I leave the family home at 412 Oak Street, the proceeds of my life insurance policy, and the remainder interest in the Peterson Family Trust." I blinked. I looked at Miles, then at Vanessa. The house was not a mansion, but with the market in Briar Glen the way it was worth a significant amount. The insurance was modest, but enough to restart a life. The trust was something I knew existed but assumed was empty. Vanessa did not shout. She did not throw anything. She simply closed her notebook with a soft snap. "This is a mistake," she said. Her voice was terrifyingly calm. "It is the current will," Miles said. "Signed 6 months ago." Thomas was very clear. "Vanessa." He felt that you were financially established, and that Claire had sacrificed her career and financial stability to care for him and your mother. He wanted to balance the scales. Vanessa turned her head slowly to look at me. Her expression was not one of sisterly betrayal. It was the look of a predator assessing a sudden change in the wind. "You did this," she said. I shook my head. "I did not know." "Vanessa, I swear. We never talked about money. You were with him every day." She said, "You controlled who he saw. You controlled his phone. You controlled his medication. I was taking care of him." I said, my voice rising, "Because you were not here." "Dad changed his mind," Vanessa said, ignoring me and turning back to Miles. "I spoke to him in February. He told me he was keeping everything equal. If this document says otherwise, it is because he was confused, or he was coerced." Miles took off his glasses. "Vanessa, I oversaw the signing." Thomas was lucid. He knew exactly what he was doing. "We will see," Vanessa said. She stood up. She smoothed the front of her skirt. "Do not distribute a single dime. Miles, I am contesting this." She walked out of the office without looking at me again. I sat there, shaking. Miles reached across the desk and placed a hand on the paper. "She is going to make this difficult." "Claire," he said softly. I did not know how right he was. The petition was filed within 48 hours. I was at work when it happened. I worked as an administrative assistant in the registrar's office at the local community college. It was a quiet job, one that allowed me to leave early when Dad needed me. I was standing at the copier, collating transcripts, when a man I did not know walked into the office. "Claire Peterson." He asked. I nodded. "Yes." He thrust a thick envelope into my hands. "You have been served." He turned and walked out. The office went quiet. My supervisor, a kind woman named Brenda, looked up from her desk. My younger colleagues stopped typing. I stood there, holding the envelope, feeling the heat rise up my neck and burn my cheeks. It was a public shaming. It was a declaration of war delivered to the one place where I tried to maintain some dignity. I went to the break room and opened the envelope with trembling fingers. It was a petition filed in probate court. Vanessa was challenging the will. She was alleging undue influence. The legal language was brutal. It painted a picture of me that made me sick. It described me as a manipulative, dependent failure who had preyed on a sick old man's vulnerability to steal his legacy. It claimed I had isolated him. It claimed I had poisoned his mind against his other daughter. She was asking the court to freeze all distributions immediately. She was asking for an independent administrator to take control of the estate. I sat on a plastic chair in the break room and cried. Not because of the money. I would have given her half. I would have given her the whole damn house if she had just asked nicely. I cried because she was rewriting my love for my father into something ugly. She was turning my sacrifice into a crime. I called Nina that night. Nina Caldwell had been my best friend since the 3rd grade. She was a nurse, tough as nails, the kind of person who would help you bury a body and then make you a sandwich. "You need a lawyer," Nina said. She was sitting at my kitchen table, pouring wine into a water glass. "I have Miles." I said, "Miles is the estate attorney." Nina said, "He represents the will. He represents your dad. You need someone who represents you. You need a shark. Claire, Vanessa has money. She has resources. She's going to try to bleed you dry before you ever see a courtroom. I cannot afford a shark." I said, "I have $2,000 in my checking account." Nina took a sip of wine. "Then we find a shark who is hungry." She found me Alina Mercer. Alina Mercer was not part of the old boys club in Briar Glen. She had an office in a strip mall next to a dry cleaner. But Nina said she had a reputation for destroying people who underestimated her. I met her 2 days later. Alina was small, with sharp features and haircut in a severe bob. She listened to my story without interrupting. She read the petition Vanessa had filed. She read the will. Then she looked at me. Inheritance disputes are rarely about money. Claire, she said. Her voice was raspy, like she smoked too much, though I saw no ashtray. What are they about? I asked. Leverage, she said. Shame. And control. Your sister does not need this money. She wants to punish you. She wants to prove that she is the dominant force in this family. She wants to erase the fact that you were the one who was there. She tapped the petition. She is going to make you look like a monster. She is going to subpoena your bank records, your emails, your text messages. She is going to depose your friends. She is going to try to break you so you settle for pennies just to make it stop. I felt cold. I cannot fight that. Alina, you have to, she said, because if you do not, she wins. And frankly, people like your sister piss me off. I hired her. I wrote a check for the retainer that emptied half my savings, and Alina went to work. The first thing she did was request the initial documents Vanessa had provided to the court. A week later, I was back in Alina's office. Look at this, Alina said. She pushed a stack of papers across her desk. It was an asset list. Vanessa had submitted it as part of her petition, claiming to have knowledge of Dad's accounts. It looks standard, I said. It is incomplete. Alina said, look at the date. This list was updated 3 days after your father died. But look here. She pointed to a reference number on the second page. It references a letter of instruction. I frowned. What is that? It is usually a document left by the deceased to guide the executor on personal matters. Specific bequests, explanations, things that do not go in the formal will. It is referenced here in the file header, but the document itself is not attached. I never saw a letter. I said, did you go through his papers? Alina asked. No. I said, I was grieving. Vanessa said she would handle the paperwork. She took all the boxes from his study the day after the funeral. Alina's eyes narrowed. She took the boxes. Yes. She said she needed to organize them for the accountant. Alina leaned back in her chair. That is aggressive, even for a type A personality. Claire, you need to go back to that house. You need to look at everything she left behind. If there is a paper trail, we need to find the crumbs she missed. I went to the house the next morning. It was strange to unlock the front door and walk into the silence. The house smelled like dust and stale air. It felt abandoned. I walked into the study. It was a small room off the living room where Dad had paid bills and read the newspaper. The desk was bare. The filing cabinets were empty. Vanessa had been thorough. I went to the kitchen. I made tea out of habit, then let it go cold. I walked through the living room. I stopped at the mantel. There was a pale rectangle on the wallpaper where a picture had hung. I frowned. It was a photo of me and Dad fishing. Taken 20 years ago, it was not valuable. It was just sentimental. Why would Vanessa take that? I went next door to Mrs. Gable. She was the neighborhood watch in human form, an 80-year-old woman who missed nothing. Claire, she said, opening the door, I saw your sister. When, I asked, the day after the funeral. She said, she had a van here, a moving van, and a man in a uniform, a courier service. They took boxes, lots of boxes. Did she take furniture? I asked. No, just paper. Mrs. Gable said, and the courier took a separate pouch. A red one. It looked important. I thanked her and went back to my father's house. I felt a rising panic. What was in that pouch? I went back to the study. I sat in his chair. I tried to think like him. Dad was a creature of habit. He was private. If he had something he wanted me to know, something he did not want Vanessa to see, where would he put it? I looked around the room. The bookshelves were still full of his spy novels and history books. Vanessa had not touched those. I stood up and ran my hand along the shelves. I remembered playing hide-and-seek here as a child. I remembered hiding a diary behind the encyclopedias. I started pulling books off the shelves. Nothing. I went to the closet in the hallway. It was full of coats and old boots. I pushed the coats aside. I looked at the shelf above the hanging rod. It was cluttered with hat boxes and old board games. I grabbed a step stool. I started moving the boxes. There, taped to the back of the metal bracket that held the shelf up, was something small and silver. I peeled the tape away. It was a key. It was a small, brass key with a black plastic head. It looked like a storage unit key. I turned it over. On the strip of masking tape wrapped around the head of the key, written in my father's distinct, spidery handwriting, was one word: Claire. I held the key in my palm. My heart hammered against my ribs. He had hidden this. He had hidden it specifically for me. He knew Vanessa would come. He knew she would strip the house. He had prepared for this. I put the key in my pocket. I did not know what it opened, but for the first time since the funeral, I felt like I was not alone. He was still guiding me. 2 days later, I had a preliminary court appearance. It was a status hearing, mostly procedural. Vanessa was there with her legal team from Wexler City. They wore suits that cost more than my car. Vanessa looked immaculate in a charcoal dress. She did not look at me during the hearing, but afterwards, as I was walking toward the exit, she intercepted me. She was alone. Her lawyers were down the hall. Claire, she said. I stopped. I tightened my grip on my purse. Vanessa, we do not have to do this, she said. Her voice was low, reasonable. This is embarrassing, for both of us. Dad would hate this. You started it, I said. I am trying to fix it, she said. She stepped closer. I am prepared to make you an offer, a settlement. I waited. I will drop the petition, she said. I will give you a cash buyout, $100,000, free and clear, and I will let you keep the personal items in the house, furniture, clothes, and the house itself. I asked. The house is an asset of the estate, she said. We will sell it and split the proceeds after expenses. But the $100,000 is yours. Today, I looked at her. It was a lowball offer. The house alone was worth 4 times that. What is the catch? I asked. She sighed, as if I were being tedious. There are standard conditions, a non-disparagement agreement. You cannot talk to the press or post about the family on social media. Is that it? I asked, and, she said, her eyes flicking away for a second before locking back onto mine. A clause that restricts you from contacting the family's financial advisors or banking representatives. Specifically regarding the estate's historical transactions, it is just to streamline the process. I do not want you harassing the bank with questions they cannot answer. I froze. That was specific. Strangely specific. Why would I contact the bank? I asked. Miles handles the estate accounts. It is just boilerplate. Claire, she said, her voice hardening. Take the deal. 100,000. You can move away. You can go back to school. You can stop pretending to be a martyr. I thought about the key in my pocket. I thought about the missing letter. I thought about the courier pouch Mrs. Gable had seen. No, I said. Vanessa's expression did not change, but the air around her seemed to drop 10 degrees. Excuse me, she said. I said no. I am not signing anything, and I'm not agreeing to stay away from the bank. Vanessa stepped in close. She smelled of expensive perfume and cold resolve. You are making a mistake, she whispered. I am following Dad's will. I said, if you push this, Claire, I will destroy you. I stepped back. Is that a threat? It is a promise, she said. I know about your therapy. Claire, I know about the incident at the university 5 years ago. I know about the debt you racked up before you moved back home. I felt the blood drain from my face. Those were private things. Things I had only told Dad in moments of vulnerability. If we go to trial, she hissed, all of that becomes public record. I will drag your personal life into open court. I will paint you as unstable, incompetent, and desperate. I will make sure everyone in this town knows exactly why you came crawling back to Daddy. I stared at her. I realized then that she had not just been distant all those years. She had been watching. She had been collecting ammunition, and Dad knew it. That was why he hid the key. I looked my sister in the eye. Do it, I said. Vanessa blinked. She had expected me to crumble. Do it, I repeated. My voice shaking but loud enough for the passing lawyers to hear. Drag it all out. But I'm not signing your paper, and I am going to find out what you are hiding. I turned and walked away. My legs were trembling, but I did not look back. I walked out of the courthouse and into the gray afternoon of Briar Glen. I reached into my pocket and closed my hand around the cold metal of the key. This was not a legal dispute anymore. This was a reckoning, and I was just getting started. Harbor Line Storage sat on the frayed edge of Briar Glen, a sprawl of corrugated metal and asphalt that looked like it had been abandoned by the tide of the local economy. It was raining again, a relentless, needle-fine mist that soaked through my jacket as I stood in front of Unit 412. The number matched my childhood address. Of course it did. My father was a man of patterns, and even in his secrets, he sought the comfort of the familiar. I inserted the small brass key I had found taped behind the closet shelf. It turned with a satisfying, lubricated click. I rolled up the metal door, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the empty corridor. The unit was small, 5 feet by 5 feet, and it smelled of old paper and the specific, spicy scent of my father's aftershave. It was not filled with furniture or discarded holiday decorations. It contained 3 plastic filing bins and a single metal shelving unit. I stepped inside, pulling the chain for the single bulb overhead. The light flickered yellow, illuminating the labels on the bins, written in my father's neat, architectural script. Taxes, 2015 to 2022. North Barrow/business records, and on the bottom shelf, a smaller box marked simply with the letter C. My breath caught in my throat. I sat down on the cold concrete floor, ignoring the damp, and pulled the box toward me. It was not taped shut. I lifted the lid. Inside, there were no legal files. There were mementos I thought had been lost years ago. My high school diploma, a dried corsage from a dance I had attended with a boy I barely remembered, and on top of it all, a white envelope with my full name written on the front, Claire Elizabeth Peterson. My hands shook as I opened it. It was not a long letter. My father was not a man who wasted words. My dearest Claire, if you are reading this, I have failed to fix the mess I made. I am sorry. I thought I could handle it on my own. I thought I could keep the peace without exposing the rot. But I see now that was pride, not wisdom. You were the one who was there. Claire, you were the one who held my hand when the pain was bad. You deserve to be safe. You deserve to be free of this family's shadow. Vanessa will come for everything. She has been waiting for a long time. She believes she is owed. If she handles this with grace, burn this box. But if she turns this into war, if she tries to hurt you, take the blue folder in the bottom of the North Barrow bin to a lawyer. Do not give it to Miles. He is a good man, but he is too trusting. I love you. You were the best part of my life. Dad. I read the letter 3 times. Then I curled my knees to my chest and wept. I cried for the apology I did not need, and for the protection he was trying to offer from beyond the grave. I cried because he had known. He had watched Vanessa's cold ambition and my quiet struggle, and he had been frantically trying to build a levee before the flood. He knew. I wiped my face with my sleeve. I looked at the letter again. If she turns this into war, Vanessa had already launched the missiles. She had served me at work. She had threatened to humiliate me. The war was not just starting. We were already in the trenches. I stood up and opened the bin marked North Barrow. Buried at the bottom, beneath stacks of invoices and permits, was a blue folder. It was thick. I did not open it there. I felt suddenly exposed, as if the flickering bulb overhead was a watching eye. I packed the boxes into my trunk, locked the unit, and drove straight to Alina Mercer's office. Alina was eating a salad at her desk when I walked in. She took one look at my face, pushed the plastic container aside, and pointed to the chair. "What happened?" she asked. "I found a storage unit." I said. I placed the blue folder on her desk. "And this?" Alina put on her reading glasses. She opened the folder. The room was silent for a long time, save for the hum of the air conditioner and the sound of pages turning. I watched her face. Alina was not a woman who showed surprise easily, but I saw her eyebrows knit together, then rise. She traced a line of text with her finger. "Well," she said softly, "this changes the landscape. What is it?" I asked. Alina turned the document toward me. It is a summary of a trust, the Ridgway Family Trust. I have never heard of it, and it was certainly not listed in the probate filings Vanessa submitted. She flipped to the next page. And this is interesting. It references a private foundation called the Morrowstead Initiative. Does that mean anything to you? I shook my head. No. My father was a civil engineer. He worked for the city for 30 years. He did not have a foundation. Alina tapped the paper. According to this, he did. Or at least, he was connected to one. But here's the weapon. Claire, look at this clause. She pointed to a paragraph of dense legal text. Beneficiary conduct provision. In the event of proven fraud, coercion, or financial malfeasance by any primary beneficiary against the grantor or another beneficiary, the offending party's interest shall be forfeit and redistributed to the remaining beneficiaries. Alina looked up, her eyes sharp. This is a behavior clause, a poison pill. Your father built a trap. He knew someone might try to coerce him or defraud the estate. If we can prove Vanessa, or anyone else, engaged in fraud, this trust locks them out. But where is the money? I asked. Dad had savings, but not enough for a foundation. Alina pulled out another document from the back of the folder. It was a purchase agreement. It seems your father held a minority stake in a company called North Barrow Development Group. She said, I know that name. They have been buying up land on the east side of the county. She scanned the page. 6 months ago. There was a buyout. Your father's shares were purchased. The sum? She paused. She looked at the number, then at me. The sum was $400,000. Claire, I stared at her. 400,000. That was impossible. My father clipped coupons. He drove a 10-year-old sedan. Where did it go? I whispered. It is not in his bank accounts. Miles said the cash assets were less than 50,000. Exactly. Alina said. It vanished. It is not in probate. It is not in his checking account, which means it was moved. Likely into this Ridgway Trust or this Morrowstead Foundation. And since those entities are not part of the probate estate Vanessa is fighting over, she cannot touch them yet. Unless what? Unless she knows they exist and is trying to force you to settle so she can access them quietly. Alina said, or she does not know. And she is fighting for the crumbs while the cake is hidden somewhere else. She leaned forward. But why would your father hide $500,000? And why does this paperwork suggest the buyout happened under accelerated terms? I do not know. I said, we are going to find out. Alina said, she closed the folder. This is not just a family dispute anymore. Claire, this is a shell game, and your sister is not the only player. The following week, the war arrived at my doorstep in the form of a discovery request. Vanessa's legal team, the high-priced firm from Wexler City, sent a demand for production of documents. It was 20 pages long. They wanted everything. My tax returns for the last 10 years, my emails with my father, my medical records, and then, buried in request number 42, the item that made my blood run cold. All records relating to psychological or psychiatric treatment, counseling, or therapy received by Claire Peterson from 2018 to present, including but not limited to session notes, diagnoses, and prescription history. I sat in Alina's office, reading the page, feeling a wave of nausea. They cannot ask for this. I said, this is private. They can ask for anything. Alina said, her voice grim. They are arguing that you exercised undue influence over your father. They are trying to build a narrative that you are mentally unstable, that you were dependent on him, and that your judgment is impaired. They want to show that you manipulated him out of desperation. I thought about the year after my mother died. I had been in a dark place. I had seen a therapist for grief and depression. I had taken medication for anxiety. It was not a secret. But it was not something I wanted read aloud in a courtroom by a lawyer in a $3,000 suit. This is harassment. I said, it is. Alina agreed. And it is standard operating procedure for firms like theirs. They want to embarrass you. They want you to look at this request, panic, and sign the settlement offer. Alina filed a motion to quash. She argued that my mental health history was irrelevant and privileged. She argued that it was a fishing expedition designed to intimidate, but the damage was done. I went to work the next day feeling like I was made of glass. Every time my phone rang, I jumped. Every time a colleague looked at me, I wondered if they knew. I wondered if Vanessa had already leaked rumors. The litigation was becoming a physical weight. I would wake up at 3 in the morning, my heart racing, thinking about the last months of my father's life. The guilt began to creep in, insidious and cold. Had I missed something? I remembered evenings when I would come over to make him dinner. He would be sitting in the study, staring at the phone, looking gray and exhausted. Is everything okay? Dad? It is handled. Claire, do not worry. It is just paperwork. It is handled. He said that so often. I had assumed he meant medical bills or insurance forms. I had assumed he was protecting me from the boredom of bureaucracy. Now, I wondered if he was protecting me from fear. I suspected Vanessa had access. She was the executor of his will before he changed it. She had his passwords. Had she been logging into his accounts? Had she seen the North Barrow money come in? Had she pressured him to move it? Or worse, had she threatened him? The memory of her voice in the courthouse hallway, "I will destroy you," played on a loop in my head. If she could say that to her own sister, what had she said to a dying man? 2 weeks later, the court ordered a settlement conference. It was a mandatory step, a final attempt to resolve the dispute before trial. We met in a conference room at the courthouse. The table was long and polished. Vanessa sat on one side, flanked by 2 attorneys who looked like they were carved out of granite. Alina sat next to me. Then the door opened, and a man walked in who did not belong. He was tall, with silver hair and a suit that fit too perfectly. He carried a leather portfolio. He did not look at me. He walked straight to the end of the table, pulled out a chair, and sat down. "Who is this?" Alina asked, her voice sharp. Vanessa's lead attorney, a woman named Ms. Sterling, smiled thinly. "This is Grant Sloan. He is a senior relationship manager at Everstead National Bank. The bank is the custodian of the estate's primary accounts. He is here to facilitate any financial questions regarding the liquidity of the assets." Alina frowned. "The bank is a neutral party. They do not typically attend settlement conferences unless subpoenaed. Mr. Sloan brings a necessary perspective on the complexity of the holdings," Miss Sterling said. Grant Sloan placed his hands on the table. They were manicured. He looked at Vanessa and gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. He did not look at me, not once. Throughout the conference, Sloan acted less like a banker and more like a silent partner. When Alina brought up the discrepancy in the asset list, Sloan intervened before Vanessa could speak. "The bank's records are comprehensive," Sloan said, his voice smooth and baritone. "There are no missing funds. Any confusion likely stems from pending transfers that were halted upon Mr. Peterson's death." "But what about the North Barrow buyout?" Alina asked. "We have evidence of a large influx of cash." Sloan's expression did not flicker. That transaction was handled through a separate brokerage. It was liquidated to cover outstanding liabilities. "What liabilities?" I asked. Sloan turned his head slowly to look at me. His eyes were cold, professional, and completely empty of empathy. "Private debts. Ms. Peterson, your father had several leverage positions that required immediate servicing." I felt a flush of anger. My father did not have debts. He paid his credit card bill in full every month. He did not gamble. He did not live beyond his means. "You are lying," I said. "Claire," Alina warned, touching my arm. "I am not lying." "Ms. Peterson," Sloan said, "I am reading the ledger. Perhaps you did not know your father's finances as well as you thought." He turned back to Vanessa. "We can provide the documentation to support the debt payments. It will, of course, reduce the overall value of the estate significantly. If you settle today, we can perhaps waive certain bank fees to preserve what is left." It was a squeeze play. They were telling me the money was gone. They were telling me that if I kept fighting, there would be nothing left to win. Vanessa looked at me. Her face was a mask of tragic resignation. "You see, Claire," she said, "there is no fortune. Just mess. Take the offer. Before it is all gone." I looked at Sloan. I looked at the way he sat. His body angled slightly toward Vanessa, creating a wall that excluded me and Alina. He was not a neutral administrator. He was invested. He was protecting something. I stood up. No, I said. Claire. Ms. Sterling said. Be reasonable. I am done being reasonable. I said, I want to see the debt records. I want to see the signatures authorizing those transfers. We will produce them in due time. Sloan said, produce them now. Alina said, or we are leaving. Sloan smiled, a small, patronizing tilt of his lips. We are not a vending machine. Ms. Mercer, there are procedures. We left. In the elevator. Alina was vibrating with energy. That man is dirty, she said. Banks do not send senior managers to probate settlement conferences for estates worth a few $100,000. They send a junior clerk with a spreadsheet. Sloan was there to manage the narrative. He was there to make sure Vanessa did not say something stupid. What debts was he talking about? I asked. Fabrications, Alina said, or manufactured liabilities. They are trying to hide the North Barrow money. We need to dig deeper. I went back to the storage unit that weekend. I needed to feel close to the truth, and the truth seemed to live in that concrete box. I sat on the floor, going through the box marked Business Records. I found receipts for lumber, old permits for deck additions, nothing incriminating. Then, I picked up an old business card holder. It was leather, worn smooth by my father's hands. I flipped through the cards. Plumbers, electricians, colleagues from the city works department. I pulled out one card. It was his own card, from when he was the senior project manager for the city. I turned it over. On the back, written in blue ink, was an email address I did not recognize. T. Peterson, private@protonmail.com, and below it, a string of random characters, B8 hash, KL9@MZ, a password. My heart hammered. Dad had a personal email address, a secure one. He had never mentioned this. He used a standard Gmail account for everything I knew about. I pulled out my phone. I had terrible reception in the metal unit. So I grabbed the card and drove to a coffee shop down the road. I opened my laptop and navigated to the site. I typed in the address. I typed in the password. Please work, I whispered. The screen loaded. Inbox, 14. I was in. I scrolled through the messages. Most were receipts. Confirmations for the storage unit rental. Notifications from the Morrowstead Initiative. But then I saw the name, Grant Sloan. I clicked on the search bar and typed Sloan. 3 emails appeared. The first was dated 4 months ago. Subject, fiduciary concerns. From Thomas Peterson to G. Sloan@Everstead. Grant. I reviewed the monthly statement. I did not authorize the transfer to the holding company. You assured me that the North Barrow funds would be segregated in the Ridgeway Trust. Why is there a withdrawal for $50,000 labeled consulting fees? I need this explained immediately. The response from Sloan was short. Thomas, it is a standard allocation for the account setup. We discussed this. I will clarify when we meet next week. The second email was dated 2 weeks later. Subject, signature verification. From Thomas Peterson. To compliance@everstead.com. To whom it may concern, I am formally flagging a transaction on my account ending in 4490. I did not sign the authorization for the transfer of funds to the Charitable Remainder Trust. The signature on the digital copy is not mine. It looks traced. I have tried to contact Mr. Sloan, but he is not returning my calls. Please investigate. There was no reply from the compliance department in the inbox. The third email was the last one he ever sent. It was dated 3 weeks before he died. Subject, meeting request. From Thomas Peterson. G. Sloan@Everstead. Grant, I'm coming to the branch on Friday. I am bringing my lawyer, not Miles. I want the full audit trail of the Morrowstead donations. If this is what I think it is, I am going to the state board. The thread ended there. I sat back in the hard wooden chair of the coffee shop, the noise of the espresso machine fading into a buzz. He was going to the state board. He had caught them. He had caught Sloan moving money without permission. He had caught them forging his signature. And then he died. The timing was terrifying. His health had declined rapidly in those last few weeks. The stress must have been unbearable. He was fighting a battle against a massive institution while his body was failing him. And Vanessa? Where was she in this? I went back to the inbox. I searched for Vanessa. There was one email. From 6 months ago. From Vanessa. Peterson at Logistics Corp. Net. To T. Peterson. Private at protonmail.com. Dad. Grant called me. He is worried about your confusion regarding the accounts. He says you are forgetting conversations. We need to talk about power of attorney. If you cannot manage this, I have to step in. For your own good. I read it again. Grant called me. Sloan had been recruiting her. He had been feeding her a narrative that Dad was losing his mind, that he was confused, that he was forgetting transactions. He had used Vanessa's ambition and her distance to turn her into an accomplice. He had weaponized her against our father to cover his own tracks. Or, Vanessa knew exactly what was happening and did not care, as long as she got her cut. I felt a wave of nausea. This was so much bigger than a will contest. This was fraud. This was predatory. I downloaded every email. I saved them to my hard drive and then to a cloud drive. I printed them out. I drove to Alina's house. It was Sunday. But I did not care. She opened the door in sweatpants, looking annoyed until she saw the stack of papers in my hand. I found the gun. I said. We sat at her kitchen table. Alina read the emails. Her face grew harder with every page. This is it, she said. This proves he was lucid. It proves he was challenging the bank, and it proves Sloan is lying about the debts. She looked at the email to the compliance department. He tried to report it, she said, and they buried it. This compliance officer. We need to find out who received this. What do we do? I asked. Alina looked at me. Now we play their game, but we play it faster. We need to depose Sloan, and we need to do it before they know we have these emails, if they know what we have. They might destroy the originals on their servers. She stood up and paced the kitchen. Claire, you need to be careful. Why? I asked. Because you just found proof that a major bank executive was embezzling from your father. People have been killed for less than this. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the drafty kitchen. I went home that night and locked every door. I closed the blinds. I established a routine. Just to keep the panic at bay, work, sleep, paperwork, I ate bland food because my stomach was in knots. I drove different routes to work. I felt like I was being watched. Maybe it was paranoia. Maybe it was the shadow of Grant Sloan's cold eyes. But I realized something else. 2. Vanessa's strategy. The delays, the harassment, the excessive discovery requests. It was all designed to exhaust me, to make me so tired, so scared, and so broke that I would walk away before I found the truth. She wanted me to quit. She expected me to quit. She saw me as the weak sister, the one who stayed home, the one who had no fight. I stood in my kitchen, in the house my father had left me, and I looked at the dark window. You are wrong, Vanessa. I whispered to the empty room. I am not the one who is trapped. You are. I had the emails. I had the key, and I had the truth. I would not settle. I would not sign their papers. I would burn their house down, brick by brick, until I found what they did to my father. The phone rang. I jumped. I looked at the caller ID. It was a blocked number. I let it ring. It rang 5 times, then stopped. My phone beeped. A voicemail. I lifted the phone to my ear. Ms. Peterson, a voice said. It was distorted. Digital. Drop the petition. You are looking for things that will hurt you. Go back to your quiet life. The line went dead. I stood there, the phone warm against my ear. My hands were trembling, but my mind was clear. They were scared. Good. I deleted the message. I checked the lock on the back door one more time. Then I went upstairs to prepare for the depositions. The panic was still there, fluttering in my chest like a trapped bird, but it was no longer paralyzing. It was fuel. The deposition room at the law offices of Sterling, Hearth, and Vance was designed to make you feel small. It was a glass box suspended 20 stories above Wexler City. Air-conditioned to a temperature that required a sweater, and furnished with a table so wide that the opposing counsel looked like they were in a different time zone. I sat there for 7 hours. Ms. Sterling, Vanessa's lead attorney, was a woman who used silence as a weapon. She would ask a question, wait for my answer, and then stare at me for 10 seconds before typing something into her laptop. Ms. Peterson, she said, adjusting her glasses, let us return to the year 2019. You moved into your father's home in October. Is that correct? Yes, I said. And did you pay rent? No. I said. My voice sounded thin in the acoustic deadness of the room. I moved in to care for my mother. She had stage 4 ovarian cancer. But you were employed, Ms. Sterling said. I was working part-time remotely, I said, to buy groceries, to pay for the co-pays that insurance did not cover. So you lived rent-free, utilized the utilities paid for by your father, and consumed food purchased by your father. Ms. Sterling said. She did not make it a question. She made it a summary of a parasitic existence. I was a caregiver, I said, feeling the heat rise in my cheeks. It was a full-time job. Ms. Sterling smiled, a brief, wintry expression. And yet, your sister Vanessa offered to hire professional nursing staff. Your father refused. Did you encourage him to refuse? Ms. Peterson, did you suggest that having strangers in the house would be unsafe? No, I said. He wanted family. Or, Ms. Sterling continued, flipping a page in her binder. Did you need a place to live because your own credit rating was, shall we say, distressed? I looked at Alina. She gave a microscopic nod. Keep going. I had student loans. I said, like everyone else. Miss Sterling made a note. So, we have a pattern of financial dependency, a pattern of isolation, and then, 6 months before his death, a sudden change in the will that disinherits the successful, independent daughter in favor of the one who was living in the guest room. She looked up. It paints a very specific picture. Claire. When it was Vanessa's turn to be deposed, the atmosphere changed. She did not look like a predator. She looked like a saint who had been burdened with a messy family. I tried so hard to help, Vanessa said, her voice catching perfectly for the court reporter. I sent money. I offered to manage his portfolio. But Claire, she was always there. She intercepted the calls. Dad would sound frightened when I did get through to him. He would say, she is listening. I dug my fingernails into my palms under the table. It was a lie, a perfectly constructed, unprovable lie. I'm just trying to clean up the chaos, Vanessa said, wiping a dry eye. I do not care about the money. I just want to make sure my father's true wishes are honored. He was not himself at the end. When we finally left the building, the sun was setting over the city skyline. I felt hollowed out. I felt like I had been stripped naked and judged by a committee of accountants. They are good, Alina said as we walked to the parking garage. I will give them that. They are telling a coherent story. A lie. I said, in court? The best story wins. Alina said, not the truth? But we caught a break during the lunch recess. She unlocked her car and tossed her briefcase in the back. I had my paralegal pull the history on the power of attorney Vanessa mentioned. Alina said, she claimed she held it for a brief period last year. She did. I said, Dad mentioned it once. He said he signed it so she could talk to the insurance company about a billing error. Well, she did more than talk to insurance. Alina said, she tried to use it to access his main checking account. But here's the interesting part. She claims it was revoked 2 weeks later because Dad got paranoid. She handed me a photocopy. This is the revocation document, she said. Look at the notary stamp. I looked. It was a standard stamp. State of Massachusetts. Commission expires 2025. But the location of the notary was listed as North Hadley. North Hadley. I said, that is 2 hours west of here. Dad never went to North Hadley. He barely left the house that month. Exactly. Alina said, and the date corresponds to a day when your father had a visiting nurse appointment at 10 in the morning. We have the logs. He was in his living room getting his blood pressure checked at the exact moment he was supposedly in North Hadley, revoking a power of attorney. What does that mean? I asked. It means the document is suspect, Alina said. If the revocation is fake, maybe the original power of attorney was never valid either. Or maybe she revoked it herself to cover tracks because she used it for something illegal and wanted to bury the evidence. We need a specialist. I said, we need a forensic document examiner. Alina corrected, and I know just the guy. His name was Arthur Penhaligon, and he worked out of a basement office that smelled of toner and chemicals. He was a small man who wore magnifying loupes around his neck like jewelry. He spent 3 days with the digital scans of the documents Vanessa's team had provided. When we met him, he had the images blown up on a large monitor. It is subtle, Arthur said, pointing to the signature line on the revocation. Very subtle. He clicked a mouse. The image zoomed in until the ink became a landscape of pixels. See the halo around the signature? He asked. There is a faint discoloration, a pixelation ghost that does not match the surrounding paper texture. I squinted. I see it. This suggests the signature was not written on this piece of paper, Arthur said. It suggests it was lifted from another document, likely a high-resolution scan, and placed here digitally. Then the whole thing was printed, signed by the notary, and scanned again to hide the artifacts. So it is a forgery. I said, it is a composite. Arthur said, in my professional opinion, your father never saw this document, and the notary? Alina asked. I checked the registry. Arthur said, the notary in North Hadley exists, but she is 70 years old and works out of a hardware store. I doubt she remembers notarizing a revocation for a man who wasn't there, or someone used her stamp without her knowing. It is not a slam dunk. Alina warned me as we left. Juries get bored with pixel counts, but it is enough to cast doubt. It is a wedge. The next wedge came from the past. I received a text from a number I did not know. Claire, it's Harold Klein. From CityWorks. I heard about Thomas. We need to talk. Harold Klein had been my father's supervisor for 10 years before they both retired. He was a gruff, chain-smoking man who sent Christmas cards with dogs on them. I met him at a diner on the edge of town, a place where the coffee was served in thick ceramic mugs and the menu was laminated. Harold looked older than I remembered. He was watching the door when I walked in. He did not hug me. He gestured to the booth. I'm sorry about your dad. Claire, he said. He was a good man. Better than most. Thank you. Harold, I said. I did not want to get involved, he said, staring into his black coffee, but I saw the obituary, and I heard your sister is making noise. She is suing me, I said. Harold nodded grimly. Figures. Thomas was terrified of her. He was, I asked. Not physically. Harold said. He felt like he couldn't say no to her. She intimidated him, but that is not why I called. He leaned in. A few months ago, Thomas came to see me. He was upset. He asked me if I knew anything about the North Barrow Development Project, the one his company was invested in. I asked. He was not invested. Claire, Harold said, that is the thing. He told me he never put a dime in that project. He said his name was on the paperwork, but he didn't sign it. He said it was a loan that wasn't a loan. What did he mean? I asked. He said someone had taken out a leverage position using his credit and his name as a guarantor. Harold said, he said the money flowed in and flowed out, and he was left holding the tax liability. He was scared. Claire, he said, I am being used as a mule. Did he say who? I asked. He wouldn't give me a name. Harold said, he just said it was people who could ruin him. And he said something else. He said he was going to amend his will. He did amend it. I said, he left the house to me. No, Harold said. He meant he was going to change where the house went. He said, I don't trust the house to be private anymore. He thought they were watching him. He thought they had bugged the place. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. The missing photo, the replaced lock, the courier service Mrs. Gable saw. He told me to tell you, Harold said, his voice dropping to a whisper. If anything happened, he said, tell Claire to look for the behavior clause. We found that. I said, in the trust. Then use it. Harold said. He put $5 on the table. Your father was not confused. Claire, he was cornered. The following week, we were back in court. This time, it was a motion to compel. The judge, a stern woman named Judge Holloway, was losing patience with the slow drip of discovery. Ms. Mercer. Judge Holloway said, "You are alleging that the bank is withholding records." "I am, Your Honor." Alina said, "We requested the transaction history for the Ridgeway Trust and the account statements for the 6 months prior to the decedent's death. Everstead National Bank has produced this." Alina held up a stack of paper. It was almost entirely black. Every transaction line, every recipient, every memo field was redacted. "Your Honor, the bank claims these redactions are necessary to protect third-party privacy." Alina said, "But we are the estate. There should be no third parties in the decedent's personal checking account unless something improper is occurring." Ms. Sterling stood up. "Her suit was navy blue today, Your Honor. The redactions pertain to the private foundation, the Morrowstead Initiative. As that entity is not part of the probate estate, its internal workings are privileged. It is funded by the decedent," Alina argued. Judge Holloway looked at the blacked-out pages. "Mr. Sloan," the judge said, looking at the gallery where Grant Sloan sat, immaculate and bored. "Why is a checking account statement treated like a state secret?" Sloan stood up. He smoothed his tie. "Your Honor, the account in question was a pass-through entity for several charitable vehicles. Mixing the data would violate the confidentiality of other donors." "Other donors?" Alina shot back. "Thomas Peterson was a retired civil servant. Why was he pooling funds with other donors in his personal account? That is a question for the account administrator," Sloan said smoothly, "who is, unfortunately, no longer with the bank." Judge Holloway narrowed her eyes. "I am ordering an in-camera review. You will provide the unredacted documents to my chambers by Friday. If I find that you are using redactions to hide relevant estate assets, Mr. Sloan, I will hold the bank in contempt." Sloan nodded. "Of course, Your Honor." He did not look worried. He looked like a man who knew that by Friday, the documents could be altered, lost, or buried under a new mountain of objections. I needed more than a judge's curiosity. I needed proof. I went back to the storage unit. It was raining again. It seemed to always rain when I went to Harborline Storage. I locked myself in the unit, the sound of the rain on the metal roof creating a deafening hum. I had been through the bins. I had found the letter, but I had not looked under everything. I pulled all the files out of the bin marked C. I turned the plastic bin upside down. Nothing. I tried the taxes bin. Nothing. I tried the business records bin. It was heavy. I emptied the hanging folders. At the very bottom, wedged between the plastic ridges of the bin floor, was a flat, metal box, a cash box. It was painted a dull gray, the kind you buy at an office supply store for $20. It was locked. I felt around the inside of the bin. No key. I checked my keychain. The key I had found in the closet opened the storage unit. It did not open this box. I sat there, frustrated. Then I remembered the letter. If she turns this into war, he had expected me to find this. I picked up the box and shook it. Something rattled inside. I took the box to my car. I drove to a locksmith in the strip mall next to Alina's office. I lost the key. I told the man at the counter, "Can you open it?" He looked at me, then at the box. 5 minutes, he said. He picked the lock in 30 seconds. I paid him and took the box out to my car. I sat in the driver's seat and opened the lid. Inside, there was no money. There were 2 silver keys, unlabeled. There was a USB drive, old and scuffed, with a piece of masking tape on it that said, "Backup." And there was a note, written on a torn piece of yellow legal pad. If they say I was confused, they are lying. That was it. 8 words. But they hit me harder than the deposition. I plugged the USB drive into my laptop right there in the parking lot. There were 3 folders, scans, drafts, and audio. I opened audio. There was a single file. Voicemail _export November 12th.mp3. I put on my headphones. I clicked play. There was a hiss of static, and then my father's voice filled my head. He sounded strong, angry. Grant, this is Thomas. I am looking at the transfer log. I did not authorize the wire to the offshore entity. I have the paper in front of me. You told me the Ridgeway Trust was domestic. You told me it was for tax mitigation. If you moved that money out of the country, you have committed a felony. I am not signing the retroactive approval. Do not ask me again, and tell your friends at the development group to stop calling my house. The recording ended. I sat there, staring at the rain streaming down the windshield. The date of the recording was November 12th, 6 weeks before he died. He was not confused. He was furious. He had caught them moving money offshore. Grant? He named him. This was the smoking gun. But before I could feel the triumph, my phone buzzed. It was my Aunt Margaret, my mother's sister. She had been like a second mother to me growing up. I answered, "Aunt Margaret, I have been trying to call you." "Claire." Her voice was cold. "Please stop calling." "What?" I asked. "Why?" Vanessa told us. She said, "She told us about the demands you are making, about how you are dragging Thomas's name through the mud because you didn't get the payout you wanted. That is not true." I said, "Vanessa is the one suing me. She is trying to protect the estate." Aunt Margaret said, "She told us you are unstable, Claire, that you are imagining conspiracies, that you are harassing the bank. Aunt Margaret, listen to me." "No, you listen." She snapped. "Your father worked hard for his reputation. If you continue this circus, do not expect us to support you. We are done." "Claire, get help." The line went dead. I lowered the phone. My hand was shaking. Vanessa had gotten to them. She had poisoned the well. She knew that if she isolated me, if she took away my support system, I would break. She was stripping away my family, my history, my credibility. I felt a sob rise in my throat, but I swallowed it down. It tasted like bile. She wants me to be unstable. I thought, she wants me to be the crazy sister. I looked at the USB drive. I am not crazy. I have the tape. I went to Alina's office. I played her the recording. Alina listened. Her eyes closed. When it finished, she opened them. "This is powerful," she said, "but it is hearsay." "What?" I shouted. "It is his voice. It is an out-of-court statement offered for the truth of the matter asserted." Alina said calmly, "Unless we can authenticate it, unless we can prove the context, the judge might exclude it, and Sloan will argue that your father was hallucinating, that there was no transfer, that he was yelling at a phantom. We have the emails." I said, "We do," Alina said, "but we need to link them. We need to find the money he's talking about." She pulled out the redacted bank statements again. "I spent all night staring at these black bars," she said, "and I found something." She pointed to page 52. "Look at the recurring payments. The Morrowstead Initiative, $200, every month on the 15th. I nodded. "A donation. Now look at the date of the last 3 payments." Alina said, "I looked. January 15th, February 15th, March 15th. My father died in December." I said, "Exactly." Alina said, "The dead do not make donations." "Claire, it was on autopay." I suggested, "Autopay usually stops when the bank freezes the accounts upon notification of death." Alina said, "Vanessa notified the bank immediately. We know that. So why did these payments continue? Someone kept them going." I said, Alina said, "The system that generates them is not connected to the standard consumer banking platform. It suggests the payments are being pushed from the inside." She sat back. "This Morrowstead Initiative, it is the key. If we can prove that money is flowing into it from a dead man's account, we have fraud. Let's file it." I said, "Let's allege fraud." "Right now?" Alina shook her head. "Not yet." "Why not?" I demanded. "We have the recording. We have the forgery. We have the zombie payments. What more do we need? We need a face." Alina said, "We need the person at the other end of those payments. If we accuse Everstead National Bank of fraud without airtight proof, they will bury us in litigation for 10 years. They will bankrupt you in legal fees before we ever get to a jury. We need to catch Sloan with his hand in the jar." "But how?" I asked. Alina smiled. But it was not a happy smile. We are going to let them think they are winning, she said. We are going to let Vanessa think you are broken. We are going to let Sloan think the redactions worked. And then, Alina said, we are going to subpoena the one thing they cannot redact. What is that? Grant Sloan, she said. We are going to put him on the stand, and we are going to ask him, under oath, why a dead man is still paying his foundation. I went home that night to an empty house. The silence was heavy. My aunt wasn't speaking to me. My sister wanted to destroy me. The bank wanted to erase me. I put the cash box under my bed. I put the USB drive in a hollowed-out book on the shelf. I lay in the dark, listening to the wind rattle the window frames. I thought about my father, scared and angry, recording that voicemail. He had been alone, too. If they say I was confused, they are lying. I closed my eyes. I will not let them lie. Dad, the isolation was working. Yes, I was lonely. I was scared. But they had made a mistake. They had stripped away everything I had to lose. And a person with nothing to lose is the most dangerous person in the room. Mediation was held in a windowless suite on the 4th floor of a corporate park that smelled of carpet cleaner and stale coffee. It was the kind of place designed to suck the emotion out of human conflict, leaving only the dry husk of compromise. We had been there for 6 hours. The mediator was a retired judge named Mr. Lawton, a man with a soothing, gravelly voice who seemed to view our family tragedy as a math problem he just needed to balance. He sat at the head of the oval table. Vanessa and her phalanx of attorneys sat on the left. Alina and I sat on the right. We are close, Mr. Lawton said, clasping his hands. Vanessa has agreed to the cash payout of $150,000. She has agreed to relinquish her claim on the house. In exchange, Claire agrees to a dismissal of the probate contest and a standard release of claims. He looked at me. It is a good offer. Claire, it ends this today. I looked at the paperwork in front of me. It was a lot of money. It was enough to fix the roof, pay off my student loans, and breathe for the first time in 5 years. Alina leaned over and whispered, "Read paragraph 14. I turned the page. Paragraph 14 was a dense block of text under the heading Confidentiality and Non-Disparagement. The petitioner agrees to refrain from any past, present, or future communication, verbal or written, with any employees, officers, or agents of Everstead National Bank regarding the decedent's accounts. Save for standard administrative inquiries routed through the executor, the petitioner further agrees to destroy any and all copies of internal bank correspondence currently in her possession." I looked up. Vanessa was watching me. Her hands were perfectly still on the table, but her jaw was tight. "I cannot sign this," I said. Ms. Sterling, Vanessa's lawyer, sighed loudly. "It is a standard clause. Ms. Peterson, we want to close the book on this. We do not want you harassing the bank's staff with conspiracy theories 2 years from now. It is not standard," Alina said, her voice cutting through the room like a razor. "You are asking her to destroy evidence. We are asking her to respect the privacy of the estate." "Ms. Sterling shot back. I looked at Vanessa. "You are scared," I said. Vanessa blinked. "I'm not scared. Claire, I am exhausted. I am trying to give you what you want so we can all move on. You are scared of what I found in the emails." I said, keeping my voice steady. "You are scared of what Grant Sloan did." Ms. Sterling slammed her hand on the table. "Mr. Lawton, this is unproductive. If Ms. Peterson refuses the settlement, we are done here. I am not signing a gag order regarding the bank." I said, "I will sign everything else. I will take the money. I will keep the house. But I keep the right to ask questions." Vanessa leaned forward. Her polish cracked. "Just for a second. If you do not sign that clause, there is no deal," she hissed. "You get nothing, and I will bury you in motions until you lose the house anyway." The room went silent. Mr. Lawton looked uncomfortable. "I think we are done," Alina said. She began packing her briefcase. Vanessa stood up. She looked at me with a mixture of pity and rage. "You are making a mistake, Claire." You are choosing a fight you cannot win against people you do not understand. I understand enough. I said, I understand that you care more about protecting Grant Sloan than you do about our father's legacy. Vanessa gathered her coat and walked out. The heavy door clicked shut, leaving a vacuum of silence in her wake. Mr. Lawton looked at me. I hope you know what you are doing. Ms. Peterson, I do not, I admitted, but I know what I am not doing. I am not letting them buy my silence. The next day, Alina called me while I was at work. I stepped into the hallway, pressing the phone to my ear as students rushed past me to their classes. I found him, Alina said. Who? I asked. The compliance officer. She said, the one your dad emailed. His name is David Arrington. Did you talk to him? I asked, my heart jumping. I tried. Alina said, I tracked him down to a condo in Portsmouth. I went to his door, and he opened the door, Alina said. I told him I represented the estate of Thomas Peterson. I showed him the email printout, Claire. The color drained out of his face. He looked like he had seen a ghost. What did he say? He said, I cannot help you. He said he signed a separation agreement when he left Everstead. A very strict one. Did he say why he left? I asked. He did not have to. Alina said, he left the bank 2 weeks after your father sent that email flagging the signature forgery. He was there for 12 years, Claire, and suddenly he is gone, living 3 states away, terrified of a breach of contract lawsuit. It confirms it. I said, Dad was right. They pushed him out to bury the complaint. It confirms it to us, Alina said. But Arrington will not testify. He closed the door in my face. He is scared. Claire, whatever is happening at that bank, it is big enough to make a compliance officer run for the hills. I hung up the phone and leaned against the lockers. I felt a cold knot in my stomach. I was fighting a war against a fortress, and my only soldiers were a dead man's emails and a lawyer who worked next to a dry cleaner. That evening, I came home to find a package on my porch. It was a cardboard box, taped shut with packing tape. The return label was Vanessa's address in the city. I brought it inside and cut the tape. A note rested on top, written on Vanessa's heavy cream-colored stationery. Found these in the attic. Thought you should have them since you are so obsessed with the past. I unpacked the box. It was filled with what Vanessa considered junk. Old holiday cards, my kindergarten drawings, a collection of ceramic birds my mother had loved, and at the bottom, face down, was a picture frame. I turned it over. It was the photo of me and Dad fishing, the one that had been missing from the wall. I sat on the floor, holding the frame. I remembered that day. I was 12. We were at the lake, and it had rained all morning, but Dad refused to leave until we caught something. We were both soaked, shivering, and smiling like idiots holding a 3-inch perch. I wiped the dust off the glass. As I did, the backing of the frame shifted. It felt loose. I turned it over. The cardboard backing was held in place by small metal tabs. One of them was bent back. My father was a man who fixed things. He never left a tab bent. I pried the other tabs open and lifted the cardboard backing. Between the cardboard and the photo, there was a folded sheet of paper. My hands shook as I unfolded it. It was a document typed on my father's old typewriter. I recognized the font, the slight misalignment of the letter E, codicil to the last will and testament of Thomas Peterson. Thomas Peterson, being of sound mind, hereby add this instruction to my executors and trustees. In the event that any portion of my estate, specifically funds associated with the Ridgeway Trust or the North Barrow Transfer, is found to be subject to financial misconduct, unauthorized transfer, or fraud, I hereby designate my daughter, Claire Peterson, as the sole beneficiary of any recovered assets. This instruction supersedes any prior distribution clauses regarding these specific funds. I am writing this because I fear I am being managed. If I am unable to sign a formal amendment before my death, let this stand as my intent. It was dated November 20th, 3 weeks before he died, but there was no signature. The line at the bottom was blank. I stared at the paper, Without a signature, it was legally worthless. It was just a scrap of paper, but narratively, it changed everything. I called Alina immediately. I drove to her office at 8 o'clock at night. She read it under the harsh light of her desk lamp. He knew, she said softly. He knew they were going to say he was confused. He knew they were going to say you influenced him. This proves his intent was to protect you. Claire, not the other way around, but it is not signed. I said, it is useless. In probate court. Intent matters. Alina said, if we can prove he wrote this, and we can. With the typewriter analysis, it destroys Vanessa's argument that he was afraid of you. A man does not write a codicil giving his daughter everything if he's afraid of her. He writes it because he trusts her to fight for him. She looked at me. Vanessa must have found this. That is why she took the photo. She found it, realized what it was, and hid it. Why send it back now? I asked. Because she thinks she has won, Alina said, or because she didn't check the frame again before dumping the junk on you. She is getting sloppy. Claire, arrogance does that. 2 days later, Vanessa's team stopped being sloppy and started being vicious. I was at work when Alina called. They filed an emergency motion. She said, you need to come to the courthouse, now. What happened? I asked. They are accusing you of evidence tampering. She said, they found out you accessed the storage unit. I drove to the courthouse with my stomach in my throat. Judge Holloway's courtroom was half full. Vanessa was there, looking pale and righteous. Ms. Sterling stood at the podium, her voice ringing with indignation. Your Honor, the petitioner has engaged in a systematic looting of estate assets. We have learned that Ms. Peterson accessed a storage unit at Harborline Storage, a unit that was not disclosed in the initial inventory, and removed boxes of documents. She did this without the executor's presence, without an inventory, and in direct violation of the court's order to preserve the estate. She turned and pointed a finger at me. We believe Ms. Peterson has destroyed records that would prove her sister's financial contributions to the decedent. We believe she is sanitizing the record to suit her narrative. We ask for immediate sanctions and for Ms. Peterson to be removed from the house until a full audit can be conducted. Judge Holloway looked at me. She looked like a woman who had very little patience left for the Peterson family. Ms. Mercer, she said, did your client access this unit? She did. Your Honor, Alina said, standing up. And did she remove documents? She removed personal effects and business records. Alina said, Judge Holloway took off her glasses. This looks very bad. Ms. Mercer, this looks like theft. It is not theft, Your Honor. Alina said, it is compliance with the decedent's instructions. Alina walked to the defense table and picked up a piece of paper. We have the lease agreement for the unit. Your Honor, it is in the name of Thomas Peterson, but the authorized access list includes one other name, Claire Peterson. Alina handed the paper to the bailiff, and, Alina continued, we have the key. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the brass key with the black tape. I held it up. My client found this key in the decedent's home, taped behind a shelf where only she would find it, labeled with her name in the decedent's handwriting. This was not a break-in. Your Honor, this was a bequest. Thomas Peterson wanted Claire to have access to that unit. He specifically hid the key from the executor. Ms. Sterling sputtered. That key could have been planted. That label could be forged. Judge Holloway raised a hand. Silence. She examined the lease agreement. She looked at the photo of the key Alina provided. She leaned forward, her eyes scanning the room. I am denying the motion to remove Miss Peterson from the home, she said. The evidence suggests the decedent intended for her to access that unit. I let out a breath. However, the judge continued, her voice dropping to a lower, more dangerous register. I am troubled by the way this case is evolving. We have allegations of forgery. We have secret storage units. We have missing funds. She looked directly at Vanessa, then at me. This is a probate court. My job is to distribute assets. But if I see one more piece of evidence suggesting fraud, real criminal fraud, I will not just sanction you. I will refer this entire matter to the district attorney's office, and I will seal the estate until a criminal investigation is complete." The room went dead silent. "Do you understand me?" she asked. "Yes, Your Honor." "Ms. Sterling whispered. "Yes, Your Honor," Alina said. The warning hung in the air like smoke. Judge Holloway was telling us that we were playing with fire. If the district attorney got involved, this wouldn't be about money anymore. It would be about prison. As we packed up, I looked at Vanessa. She did not look relieved. She looked terrified. If the DA started digging, they wouldn't just look at me. They would look at the bank. They would look at Grant Sloan. And that was exactly what she didn't want. We walked out of the courtroom, and Alina pulled me into a side corridor. That was close. She said, "But the judge just gave us a roadmap." "What do you mean?" I asked. "She said if she sees fraud, she calls the DA." Alina said, "So let's show her the fraud." We went back to the office. Arthur, the forensic examiner, was waiting for us. He looked excited. I looked at the bank document you gave me. He said, "The transfer authorization for the North Barrow buyout, the one Sloan produced." I asked, "Yes. It is dated October 15th. It looks perfect. Signature matches. Letterhead is correct. So it is real." I asked, my heart sinking. Arthur smiled. "On paper. Yes, but I analyzed the metadata of the digital file they sent over in Discovery." He turned his laptop around. "The file creation date is January 10th. He said, "That is a month after Dad died." I said, "Correct," Arthur said. "But here's the kicker. The document contains a unique identifier in the footer. It is a version code used by the bank's software to track form updates. This specific version code, V4.2, was not rolled out by Everstead's IT department until December 20th. I stared at the screen. "You are saying they used a template that didn't exist yet?" I said. Arthur nodded. "It is impossible for your father to have signed a V4.2 form in October. The form didn't exist. Someone at the bank created this document in January, backdated it to October, and pasted your father's signature onto it. They recreated the evidence," Alina said, her eyes widening. "They didn't have the original authorization because it never existed. So when we started asking questions, Sloan had to manufacture it. This is it," I said. "This is the fraud. This is a felony," Alina said. I went home that night feeling a strange mixture of triumph and terror. We had them. We had proof that the bank was fabricating documents. But the enemy knew we were getting close. I checked my mail. There was a plain white envelope in the stack of bills. No return address. No stamp. It had been hand-delivered. I opened it on the porch. Under the flickering light, inside was a single sheet of printer paper. Times New Roman. 12 point. "Ask why the judge knows him." That was it. I stared at the words. Him. Did it mean Sloan? Ask why the judge knows him. I felt a shiver of paranoia. Judge Holloway had been tough on us, but she had also warned Vanessa. Was she compromised? Was she friends with Sloan? Or was she warning us in code? I looked out at the street. The streetlights hummed. A car drove by slowly, its headlights sweeping across my lawn. I went inside and locked the deadbolt. I checked the back door. I checked the windows. My anxiety, which I had been managing with work and routine, spiked into a red-line fever. Every shadow looked like a threat. Every creak of the floorboard sounded like footsteps. I wanted to hide. I wanted to call Vanessa and say, "You win. Take it. Just make it stop." But then I looked at the mantelpiece. I looked at the empty spot where the fishing photo belonged. I remembered the draft codicil. I am writing this because I fear I am being managed. They had managed him to death. They had isolated him, lied to him, and stolen from him. And now they were trying to do the same to me. I went to the kitchen table. I opened my laptop. I created a new document. The log. I started typing. October 15th. Alleged transfer date. Form 5, 4.2 used. Proven impossible. November 12th. Dad records voicemail referencing Grant Sloan. November 20th. Dad drafts codicil alleging misconduct. December 4th. Dad dies. December 5th. Vanessa empties the house. January 10th. Bank creates fake transfer document. February 14th. Anonymous note received. I listed every interaction, every date, every threat. I was turning my fear into data. I was building a wall of facts that no amount of gaslighting could breach. The next morning, I walked into Alina's office. I looked tired. I had not slept well. But I felt sharp. File it. I said. File what? Alina asked. The motion. I said, we are done playing defense. I want unredacted records. And I want Sloan. Alina looked at the log I had printed out. She looked at Arthur's report. It is risky. Claire. She said, if we subpoena a senior bank executive for a fraud hearing, they will come at us with everything they have. They will attack your character. They will attack your sanity. They already have. I said. Alina nodded slowly. She picked up her pen. Okay, she said. Let's go hunting. She drafted the subpoena. Grant Sloan, Everstead National Bank. You are hereby commanded to appear and testify. We filed it that afternoon. The reaction was immediate. Within an hour. Ms. Sterling called Alina, threatening to file for a protective order. She claimed Sloan was a high-level executive who could not be bothered with petty family squabbles. Alina held the line. We are alleging that the bank is a party to the fraud. She told her, he is not a witness. Ms. Sterling, he is a suspect. 2 days later, the judge set the hearing. It would be a public evidentiary hearing. No sealed records, no chambers. The bank would have to answer in the light of day. I went to the storage unit one last time. I needed to feel my father's presence. I sat in the cold, smelling the old paper and the dust. I held the brass key in my hand. We are going to court. Dad, I whispered, and I'm going to ask them why the judge knows him. I didn't know who sent the note. I didn't know if the judge was a villain or a savior. But I knew one thing. The secrets were about to come out, and once they did, nothing in Briar Glen would ever be the same. I stood up, locked the unit, and drove into the rain. I was not the practical daughter anymore. I was the storm. The morning of the evidentiary hearing. The sky over Briar Glen was the color of a bruised plum. It was a heavy, suffocating gray that pressed down on the rooftops, threatening a storm that refused to break. I woke up at 4 a.m, my stomach churning with a mixture of dread and adrenaline. I put on my best suit, a navy blue jacket and skirt I had bought on sale 3 years ago for a job interview. It was clean, practical, and unassuming. When I arrived at the courthouse, Vanessa was already there. She stepped out of a black town car that shone like a beetle's wing in the dull light. She was wearing black, of course, not the simple, respectful black of mourning, but a structural, architectural black dress that looked like it had been cut from a darker dimension. She wore oversized sunglasses, though there was no sun. She looked wealthy, grieving, and utterly superior. I walked past her. She did not turn her head, but I saw the muscles in her jaw tighten. She knew I was not settling. She knew I was dragging this into the light. The courtroom was smaller than I expected for a battle that felt this large. It was wood-paneled and smelled of furniture polish and anxiety. The gallery was mostly empty, save for a few legal associates and, surprisingly, my neighbor Mrs. Gable, who gave me a fierce, silent nod from the back row. Judge Holloway entered. The bailiff called out, and we all stood. The judge looked tired. Her eyes scanned the room, lingering for a fraction of a second on the empty chair at the defense table before settling on us. Ms. Mercer, she said, call your first witness. Alina stood up. She looked small next to the pile of banker's boxes on our table, but her voice was steel. We call Grant Sloan. The doors opened, and Grant Sloan walked in. He was the picture of corporate reliability. He wore a gray suit, a crisp white shirt, and a tie in a reassuring shade of blue. He walked to the stand with an easy athletic stride, took the oath, and sat down, adjusting the microphone with a practiced hand. Alina approached the podium. Mr. Sloan, she began, You are a senior relationship manager at Everstead National Bank. Is that correct? It is, Sloan said. His voice was a smooth baritone, designed to calm nervous investors. And you manage the accounts of the late Thomas Peterson. I manage the relationship. Yes, Sloan corrected gently. I oversaw the portfolio strategy. Alina picked up a document, a stapled packet of paper. Mr. Sloan, I am showing you Exhibit C, a transfer authorization dated October 15th. This document purports to authorize the movement of $400,000 from Mr. Peterson's personal holding to the Ridgeway Family Trust. Did you oversee this transaction? I did, Sloan said. And did Mr. Peterson sign this document in your presence? Sloan smiled, a small, patient expression. Mr. Peterson was a longtime client. We often handled paperwork digitally for his convenience. He signed the document remotely and returned it to us via secure courier. So you did not see him sign it? Alina pressed. I authenticated the signature against our records. Sloan said. It matched perfectly. Alina nodded. She walked back to the table and picked up another piece of paper. Mr. Sloan, are you aware that the internal version code on this document, V4.2, was not released by your bank's IT department until December 20th? Sloan did not blink, but his fingers, resting on the railing of the witness box, tapped once. I am not an IT specialist, Ms. Mercer. Forms are updated frequently. It is possible the version number refers to a legacy template. Alina paused. She let the silence stretch. Let us move on, she said. In your deposition, you stated that this transfer was necessary to cover, quote, outstanding liabilities. Can you tell the court who authorized the liquidation of the North Barrow assets to fund this transfer? Sloan shifted in his seat. As I said, Mr. Peterson authorized it. He was concerned about tax exposure. Alina flipped a page in her binder. That is interesting, Mr. Sloan, because in an email dated November 1st to your compliance department, you stated that the liquidation was automatic, triggered by a margin call. Which is it? Did Thomas Peterson authorize it to save on taxes, or did the bank seize it to cover a debt? Sloan hesitated. It was brief, a flicker of calculation behind his eyes. It was a complex situation. He said, there were elements of both. Mr. Peterson gave verbal authorization to resolve the margin issue. Verbal authorization, Alina repeated. For a $400,000 transaction, it is not uncommon with high net worth clients. Sloan said, but my father was not a high net worth client, was he? Alina snapped. He was a retired civil engineer with a pension. The only reason he had $400,000 was because of a buyout he did not understand. A buyout you facilitated. Objection. Ms. Sterling called out from the defense table. Argumentative. Sustained. Judge Holloway said. Watch your tone. Ms. Mercer. Alina took a breath. She looked at me. I nodded. Use the weapon, Your Honor. Alina said. I would like to introduce a piece of evidence that speaks directly to Mr. Sloan's claim of verbal authorization. We have a recovered voicemail from the decedent's personal device. Ms. Sterling stood up immediately. Objection. Hearsay. Authentication issues. We have the metadata. Your Honor, Alina said, we have the device chain of custody, and under the residual exception. This statement is evidence of the decedent's state of mind regarding the transaction in question. Judge Holloway looked at the defense table. I will allow it provisionally. Play the tape. Alina connected her laptop to the courtroom speakers. She pressed play. The room filled with the sound of static. And then, my father's voice. It was loud, distorted, but undeniably him. Grant, this is Thomas. I am looking at the transfer log. I did not authorize the wire to the offshore entity. I have the paper in front of me. You told me the Ridgeway Trust was domestic. You told me it was for tax mitigation. If you move that money out of the country, you have committed a felony. I am not signing the retroactive approval. Do not ask me again. The recording ended. The silence that followed was absolute. I looked at Vanessa. She was staring at the table, her face pale. She had never heard that recording. She had not known it existed. I looked at Sloan. The smooth corporate mask had slipped. His face was red. He was staring at the speaker as if it were a bomb that had just gone off. "Mr. Sloan," Alina said softly. That was Thomas Peterson. "Does that sound like a man who gave verbal authorization?" Sloan leaned into the microphone. Clients often get confused about the technical details of international banking. Mr. Peterson he was declining cognitively. He often forgot conversations we had, so he was confused. Alina said, "Yes." Sloan said, finding his footing. He was confused, paranoid. It was tragic. Alina looked at the judge. No further questions. Sloan stepped down. He walked back to the gallery, but he did not walk with the same athletic confidence. He walked quickly, eyes on the floor. Next, Miss Sterling called Vanessa to the stand. Vanessa walked up, her heels clicking on the hardwood. She sat down, smoothed her dress, and looked at the judge with wide, sorrowful eyes. "Ms. Peterson," Ms. Sterling asked, "can you describe your father's mental state in the months before he died?" Vanessa took a tissue from her purse. She dabbed at her eye. "He was struggling," she said. Her voice was soft, trembling. "He would call me late at night, asking about money he didn't have. He would talk about people watching him. He was scared. And how did your sister, Claire, handle this?" Ms. Sterling asked. Vanessa looked at me. It was a look of pure, distilled pity. "Claire tried," Vanessa said, "but she was overwhelmed. She has her own history of emotional challenges. I think Dad's confusion fed into hers. They created this feedback loop of paranoia. I tried to step in. I tried to take over the finances to protect him, but Claire wouldn't let me. She wanted to be the hero. I sat there, gripping the edge of the table. It was a masterclass in manipulation. She was taking the truth, my care, my presence, and twisting it into pathology. She was weaponizing his vulnerability and my grief to paint a picture of a chaotic, incompetent household that needed a corporate savior. But as I watched her, I didn't feel the shame she wanted me to feel. I felt cold. I felt a clarity sharper than any anger I had ever known. She is lying, I thought, and she knows she is lying, and that means she is not grieving. She is negotiating. Ms. Sterling finished. Alina stood up. "Vanessa," Alina said, "you claim you tried to step in to protect him. Is that why you obtained a durable power of attorney?" "Yes," Vanessa said. "And you claim it was revoked because he was paranoid?" "Yes." Alina picked up a piece of paper, the revocation document. "Did you hire the notary for this revocation?" "No," Vanessa said. "Dad handled that." Alina turned to the back of the courtroom. "Your Honor, at this time, we would like to call a rebuttal witness, Ms. Brenda Higgins." Vanessa froze. Her head snapped toward the door. A middle-aged woman in a floral blouse walked in. She looked terrified. She was clutching a handbag like a shield. Ms. Higgins took the stand. She was sworn in. "Ms. Higgins," Alina asked, "you are a notary public in the town of North Hadley." "I am," the woman whispered. "I am showing you a revocation of power of attorney dated November 5th. Is that your stamp and signature?" Ms. Higgins looked at the paper. She nodded. "Yes. And was Thomas Peterson present when you stamped this document?" The woman looked at Vanessa. Then she looked at the judge. She started to cry. "No," she said. Alina let the word hang in the air. "No," Alina repeated. "Then how did you notarize it?" "A man came to my house," Ms. Higgins said, her voice shaking. "He said he was from the bank, Everstead. He had a stack of papers. He said they were just administrative updates. He said the client was in the hospital and couldn't travel. He paid me $500 cash to stamp them." "Who was the man?" Alina asked. "I don't know his name," Ms. Higgins sobbed. "But he drove a silver sedan, and he had a ring, a college ring, with a blue stone." I looked at the gallery. Grant Sloan was wearing a college ring with a blue stone. I had seen it glinting under the lights. Sloan was not looking at the witness. He was looking at his phone, typing furiously. Judge Holloway slammed her gavel. "Counsel, into my chambers. Now." The judge stood up, her robes swirling around her. She did not look tired anymore. She looked furious. Alina and Ms. Sterling followed her through the side door. The courtroom buzzed. Vanessa was sitting perfectly still, staring at the empty witness stand. She looked like a statue that had begun to crack. I sat alone at the table. I looked at Sloan. He stood up and walked out of the courtroom. Phone to his ear. 10 minutes passed, then 20. When the door opened, the judge walked back in. But something had changed. Judge Holloway's face was drawn. She moved stiffly. She sat down and folded her hands. She did not look at me. She did not look at Vanessa. She looked at a point on the back wall. "This court is ordering a brief recess," she said. Her voice was formal, stripped of the anger she had shown moments ago. "I am instructing counsel to confer regarding a potential resolution." She looked at Alina. "Ms. Mercer, I would suggest you listen very carefully to what the defense has to say. It was a warning. I knew it. I could feel it in the air. Someone had gotten to her, or she had realized just how deep the rot went, and she was stepping back from the edge. The judge exited. Ms. Sterling rushed over to our table. She looked frantic. Vanessa followed her. "We need to settle." "Ms. Sterling said. "Now, what is the offer?" Alina asked, her voice cool. "Claire gets the house," Ms. Sterling said. "Full title, immediate transfer, and $300,000 cash." $300,000. I repeated. That was double the previous offer. "And," Ms. Sterling said, looking at Vanessa. A private letter of apology from Vanessa, acknowledging that Thomas was of sound mind. I looked at Vanessa. She was pale, her lips pressed into a thin line. "I will write it," Vanessa said. "I will say, I was wrong. Just end this. What is the catch?" I asked. Ms. Sterling pulled a document from her briefcase. "It is a global settlement agreement," she said. "It contains a complete non-disclosure clause. You cannot discuss this case, the evidence, or the bank with anyone, not the press, not the police, not the regulatory boards. The case file will be sealed. The voicemail, the emails, the testimony. It all gets buried. It is a hush fund." Alina said. "It is safety." Ms. Sterling hissed. "Claire, listen to me. This has gone too far. You have made your point. You get the money. You get the house. You get the win." I looked at the document. $300,000. Security. No more lawyers. No more fear. I could go back to my life. I could fix the roof. I could mourn my father in peace. I looked at Vanessa. She looked small now. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a desperate, frantic need to escape. "Please, Claire," she whispered. I almost said yes. The exhaustion was a physical weight on my shoulders. I just wanted to sleep. But then I remembered the note in the cash box. If they say I was confused, they are lying. They had lied. They had lied about his mind. They had lied about his debts. They had lied about the revocation. And now they wanted to pay me to help them bury the lie forever. If I signed this, Sloan walked free. If I signed this, the notary went back to her hardware store. If I signed this, the fraud continued. I looked at the judge's empty chair. I remembered the way she had looked when she returned from chambers, guarded, cautious. Why was she scared? I looked at Ms. Sterling. "No." I said. Ms. Sterling dropped the paper. "Are you insane? This is more than you asked for. I want the truth." I said, "I want it on the record." Vanessa grabbed my arm. Her grip was painful. "You idiot," she hissed. "Do you not understand what is happening? This isn't about me anymore. They will destroy you. Who is they?" I asked. Vanessa let go. She stepped back, her eyes wide with fear. "I am done," she said. "I am washing my hands of you." She turned and walked out of the courtroom. Ms. Sterling gathered her papers, shot me a look of disbelief, and followed. Alina looked at me. "You just turned down a fortune," she said. "I know." I said, "Are you sure?" "I am sure." I said, "But Alina, why did the judge change?" Alina packed her laptop. "I don't know, but we are going to find out." We left the courthouse. The storm had finally broken. Rain lashed against the concrete steps, washing away the dust of the city. I walked to my car, a battered sedan parked in the far lot. I was shaking. I had just risked everything. As I fumbled for my keys, I saw a reflection in the driver's side window. A car was idling 3 rows back, a dark gray sedan. I unlocked my door and got in. I locked it immediately. The gray sedan pulled out. It did not turn on its headlights. Even though the rain was heavy, I started the engine and drove toward the exit. The gray sedan followed. I turned left onto Main Street. The sedan turned left. I turned right onto a side street. The sedan turned right. My heart hammered against my ribs. This wasn't paranoia. This was real. I grabbed my phone. I called Alina. I am being followed. I said, "Where are you?" Alina asked. Her voice was sharp. "I am on 4th Street, heading toward the highway." "Do not go home," Alina said. "Go to the mall. Go somewhere with cameras and people. I will meet you there." I drove to the Briar Glen Mall. I pulled into a spot right in front of the main entrance. Under the bright LED lights, the gray sedan slowed down, drove past me, and disappeared around the corner. I saw the silhouette of the driver. Male, heavy-set. I ran inside the mall. I sat on a bench near the food court, shaking, watching the automatic doors. Alina arrived 10 minutes later. She looked furious. "Did you get a plate?" she asked. "No," I said. "It was covered in mud." Or tape. She sat down next to me. She took my hand. Her hand was cold. "Claire, this is escalating. They are trying to scare you into taking the deal. It is working." I said, "I am scared." "Good," Alina said. "Fear keeps you alert. But listen to me. I found something while you were driving." She opened her laptop on the food court table. When the judge called us into chambers, she had a file on her desk. Alina said, "She tried to cover it, but I saw the case number." She pointed to the screen. 22 CV sealed. I searched the docket. Alina continued, "The case is sealed, obviously, but the index lists the parties involved in the procedural motions." She pointed to a line of text. "In re, Judicial Ethics Inquiry / Everstead National Bank." I stared at the words. "The judge is being investigated," I whispered, "or she is part of the investigation." Alina said, "That is why she froze when the notary admitted the fraud. That is why she came back terrified. This isn't just a probate case. Claire, Everstead National Bank is already under federal scrutiny, and our little case just wandered into the middle of a massive judicial ethics probe." "The note," I said, "ask why the judge knows him." "Exactly," Alina said. "The him might be Sloan, or it might be someone higher up, but Judge Holloway is compromised. She cannot rule on this fraud because she is already entangled in it." "So what do we do?" I asked. "If the judge is compromised, we have no one." Alina closed the laptop. She looked at me with a grim determination. "We have 1 day left," she said. "The final hearing is tomorrow. Vanessa's team will move to dismiss based on the settlement offer you rejected. They will argue you are acting in bad faith, and the judge will agree." I said. "To get rid of the case, probably," Alina said, "unless we blow the doors off." "How?" "We put everything into the record," Alina said. "The emails, the voicemail, the notary's confession. We make it so public, so loud, that she cannot bury it without ending her career. And if they follow me again," Alina looked at the mall entrance. "Then you drive faster," she said. I went home that night, but I did not sleep. I sat in the living room with the lights off, watching the street. I saw a car pass by slowly at 2A. It slowed down in front of my house, then accelerated away. I clutched the phone in my hand. I thought about the man in the black suit, the one from the outline in my head, the one who hadn't appeared yet. "The monitor. Where are you?" I whispered to the dark room. I felt like I was standing on a train track, watching the light of the locomotive get bigger and bigger. Tomorrow was the end. I would either lose everything, my home, my safety, my father's legacy, or I would break the machine that killed him. I looked at the empty spot on the wall where the fishing photo belonged. "Hold on, Dad," I said. "We are almost there." The final morning of the hearing arrived with a strange, pressurized silence, like the air inside a bell jar before the glass shatters. The storm that had lashed Briar Glen for 2 days had passed, leaving the sky a hard, brilliant blue that hurt the eyes. I walked up the courthouse steps alone. I did not feel the trembling anxiety that had plagued me for weeks. I did not feel the nausea of grief. I felt a cold, crystalline calm. It was the feeling of a soldier who has stopped worrying about dying and started focusing on the mechanics of the rifle. When I pushed open the double doors of courtroom 4, the atmosphere hit me like a physical wave. The room was packed. On previous days, the gallery had been empty save for a few bored clerks and Mrs. Gable. Today, every bench was full. There were suits I did not recognize. There were young associates with laptops. There were people who looked like they belonged in a boardroom in New York. Not a probate court in Massachusetts. Vanessa was already at the plaintiff's table. She was wearing black again, but the effect was different today. Her designer dress, usually an armor of sharp lines and expensive fabric, seemed to hang on her. Her posture, typically rigid with entitlement, was brittle. She was whispering furiously to Ms. Sterling, her hands moving in sharp, jerky gestures. She looked up as I walked down the aisle. Her eyes were rimmed with red, the makeup applied a little too heavily to cover the sleeplessness. There was no pity in her look today. There was only panic. I sat down next to Alina. Alina looked tired, but her eyes were bright with the hunt. She had 3 banker's boxes stacked on the table. "We have the unredacted logs," she whispered to me. "The judge compelled them at 5 o'clock yesterday. They are messy, Claire, but they show the flow." "Where is Sloan?" I asked, scanning the room. "He is not here," Alina said. "Ms. Sterling says he has a medical emergency. Convenient. It does not matter." I said, "We have his emails." Judge Holloway entered. The room stood. The judge looked worse than Vanessa. Her face was gray, her movements stiff. She sat down and arranged her robes, but her hands were shaking slightly. She did not look at the gallery. She kept her eyes fixed on the file in front of her. "Be seated," she said. Her voice was thin. "Ms. Mercer," she continued, "you have a motion regarding the bank records." "Yes, Your Honor," Alina said. Standing up, she picked up a thick binder. "We are moving to enter the unredacted transaction logs from Everstead National Bank into the record," Alina said. "These documents, which we received late yesterday, show a clear pattern of unauthorized automated transfers from the decedent's account to the Morrowstead Initiative, continuing for 3 months after his death. Objection." Ms. Sterling stood up. Her voice was shrill. "Relevance. The bank's internal automated processes are not evidence of fraud. They are evidence of a clerical lag. This is a fishing expedition designed to embarrass a financial institution that is not on trial here." "They are on trial," Alina shot back. "They are the mechanism of the undue influence." Judge Holloway rubbed her temples. "Ms. Mercer, be careful. You are alleging that a major national bank is conspiring to steal from a pensioner. That is a significant accusation. I am alleging that my client's father was robbed," Alina said, "and I have the map of how they did it." Alina raised the binder. "Your Honor, page 42 shows a transfer of $10,000 on January 15th. The authorization code matches the code used on the forged revocation document. It is the same hand, the same user ID. Ms. Sterling slammed her hand on the table. "This is speculation. It is math," Alina said. The energy in the room was spiking. The observers in the gallery were leaning forward. Vanessa was staring at the table, her knuckles white. Alina took a breath. She prepared to read the user ID into the record, and then, the doors at the back of the courtroom opened. It was not a loud noise. It was a heavy hydraulic whoosh of air, but it cut through the tension like a knife. Alina stopped speaking. "Ms." Sterling turned around. A man walked in. He was in his 60s, tall, wearing a black suit that was neither fashionable nor cheap. It was a uniform. He wore a white shirt and a dark tie. He carried nothing but a thin manila folder. He walked down the center aisle. He did not look at the gallery. He did not look at the attorneys. He looked directly at the bench. The bailiff, a large man who usually stopped anyone crossing the bar, stepped forward instinctively. "Sir," the bailiff said, "you cannot enter the well." The man did not stop. He simply held up a small leather credential case. He did not slow down. The bailiff froze. He looked at the credential, then stepped back as if he had been burned. The man walked through the gate. I looked at the judge. Judge Holloway had frozen. It was not a theatrical gasp. It was a total cessation of movement. Her pen hovered over the paper. Her eyes went wide, the pupils dilating an instant. Biological fear. The room went deadly silent. The air pressure seemed to drop. The man stopped in front of the bench. He placed the thin folder on the judge's desk. "State your name for the record." Judge Holloway whispered. Her voice was barely audible. The man turned to the court reporter. He spoke in a voice that was dry, flat, and completely devoid of emotion. "My name is Arthur Crane," he said. "I am the independent monitor appointed by the Second Circuit regarding the consent decree and deferred prosecution agreement of Everstead National Bank." "Ms. Sterling stood up. She looked confused. "Objection." She said, "Who is this? We are in the middle of a probate hearing. This is highly irregular. Mr. Crane turned his head slowly to look at her. He did not blink. "Sit down, counselor," he said. It was not a shout. It was a command, given with the absolute weight of an authority that did not care about probate rules. "Ms. Sterling opened her mouth, then closed it. She sat down. "Mr. Crane turned back to the judge. "Your Honor," he said, "my office has been monitoring the internal compliance logs of Everstead National Bank as part of the federal inquiry into the Morrowstead structure. We received an alert 48 hours ago that documents related to the Peterson estate, specifically the revocation of power of attorney and the North Barrow transfer authorizations, match the forensic signature of a pattern currently under sealed indictment." Vanessa made a sound. It was a small, strangled whimper. "Mr. Crane continued, I am here to inform the court that the assets in question are now subject to a federal preservation order. I am taking immediate custody of Exhibits A through F." He pointed to the banker's boxes on our table. "Ms. Sterling stood up again, her face red. "Your Honor, this is an outrage. You cannot simply hand over evidence in a private civil suit to a third party without a hearing. My client has rights. This is a family matter." Mr. Crane looked at the judge. He waited. Judge Holloway looked at Mrs. Sterling. She looked at the man in the black suit. She looked at the folder he had placed on her desk. "The objection is overruled," the judge said quickly. Her voice was shaking. "Overruled?" Ms. Sterling practically screamed. "On what grounds?" "On the grounds that I'm not going to obstruction of justice charges for you or anyone else." Judge Holloway snapped. She looked at the bailiff. "Turn over the exhibits to Mr. Crane." Alina looked at me. Her eyes were wide. They were watching. She whispered, "The whole time, the anonymous note, the sealed case. They were just waiting for us to dig it up so they could verify it." The bailiff began handing the files to Mr. Crane, the revocation document, the transfer logs, the USB drive with my father's voice. I watched them go. I felt a sudden surge of panic. "Wait," I said, standing up. Alina grabbed my arm. "Claire, sit down." I ignored her. "That is my father's voice." I said, "That USB drive. It is the only copy." Mr. Crane turned to me. For the first time, his expression softened. "Just a fraction of a millimeter. It will be preserved." "Ms. Peterson," he said, "it is evidence in a much larger trial. Your father's complaint to the Compliance Board was the first domino. You should be proud." He put the files into a briefcase he produced from under the table. He turned to Vanessa. "Ms. Peterson," he said. Vanessa looked up. She looked like a ghost. "You are not named in the federal indictment at this time." Mr. Crane said, "However, your communications with Mr. Grant Sloan are now part of the record. I would advise you to remain within the jurisdiction." Vanessa did not speak. She stared at him with a look of pure, unadulterated horror. "Mr." Crane turned back to the judge. "Thank you, Your Honor. The monitor's office will handle the asset freeze." He turned and walked out. He walked back up the aisle, through the gate, past the staring gallery, and out the doors. The silence he left behind was heavy enough to crush a lung. "Ms." Sterling was the first to move. She began packing her briefcase with frantic, jerky movements. "We are done," she muttered. "I am withdrawing." "I am not getting disbarred for this." Vanessa grabbed her arm. "You cannot leave me. I can and I am." "Ms." Sterling hissed. "You told me this was a simple will contest. You didn't tell me you were laundering money for a bank that is under federal investigation." "I didn't know," Vanessa cried. Her voice echoed in the silent room. "I just did what Grant told me. He said it was standard." Judge Holloway slammed her gavel. It sounded like a gunshot. "Enough," the judge shouted. She looked at the wreck of her courtroom. She looked at the empty spot where the evidence had been. "I am issuing a ruling," the judge said. Her voice was tight, clipped. "The petition to invalidate the will based on undue influence is denied with prejudice. The court finds no evidence that Claire Peterson exerted any improper control over the decedent. The will stands." I let out a breath I had been holding for 6 months. "However," the judge continued, "due to the intervention of the federal monitor, the liquid assets of the estate, including the North Barrow funds and the Ridgeway Trust interest, are frozen pending the outcome of the external investigation." She looked at me. "Ms. Peterson, you have the house, you have the personal effects, the money. The money is gone for now." I nodded. I understood. "Case closed," the judge said. She stood up and practically ran for the door to her chambers. The courtroom erupted. The observers in the gallery began talking at once. Reporters were typing on their phones. Alina turned to me. She was grinning, a wild, incredulous grin. "We won," she said. "Claire, we actually won." "Did we?" I asked. "You have the house," she said. "You cleared your name, and you just took down a bank executive." "Yes, we won." I looked across the aisle. Vanessa was sitting alone. Ms. Sterling was gone. Vanessa was staring at the table, her hands trembling. I stood up and walked over to her. Alina tried to stop me, but I shook her head. I stood next to my sister. I looked down at her. "Vanessa," I said. She looked up. Her eyes were glassy. "You have to leave," she whispered. "What?" I asked. "You have to leave Briar Glen," she said. Her voice was high, hysterical. "You don't understand what you just did. I exposed the truth." I said, "You exposed them." Vanessa hissed. She stood up, her chair scraping violently against the floor. "You didn't just win a lawsuit, Claire," she said, leaning into my face. "You ruined everything. The plan, the protection. Grant said he would handle the debts if I helped him with the signature. He said he would keep us safe." "Safe from what?" I asked. "From the people who lent Dad the money for North Barrow," she screamed. "It wasn't a bank loan, Claire. It was private equity. It was them." She covered her mouth, realizing she had said too much. She looked around the room, terrified. "I am leaving," she whispered. "I am going to the airport. Do not call me. Do not look for me." She grabbed her purse and ran. She ran down the aisle, her heels clacking on the floor. A broken, terrified woman fleeing a shadow I couldn't see. I watched her go. In the hallway. 5 minutes later, the adrenaline crashed. I leaned against the wall, my knees shaking. Alina was talking to a reporter near the elevators, spinning the victory. I was alone. My phone rang. I looked at the screen. Miles Harrow, the estate attorney, the man who had started this by reading the will. I answered. "Miles, Claire." His voice was shaking. He sounded old. I just heard, "From the clerk. It is over." "Miles," I said, "the will stands. Nothing is over." Miles said, "Claire, listen to me carefully. I didn't know. I swear to God. I didn't know about the monitor. I didn't know about the fake accounts. I know." "Miles," I said, "you were just the paper pusher. I was the blindfold," he said bitterly. But listen, you need to go home. You need to change your locks. You need to change your passwords. Everything. Why? I asked. The monitor took the evidence. Sloan is finished. Sloan is just a middleman. Miles said, Vanessa called me 10 minutes ago. She was crying. She said the debt wasn't erased. Claire, it was just exposed. I felt a chill go through me. Investigators are going to come, Miles said. Real ones, not the bank's people. You need to be ready. Do not sign anything without Alina. And Claire? Yes, your father was a brave man, Miles said, but he was playing a game he couldn't win. You just flipped the board. Be careful. The line went dead. I lowered the phone. I walked out of the courthouse and into the bright, blinding sun. The air smelled of wet asphalt and ozone. I walked to my car. I got in and locked the doors. I looked at the passenger seat. It was empty. The ghost of my father, the memory of his fear, felt suddenly very far away. I had won. I had the house. I had my name. But as I put the key in the ignition, I looked in the rearview mirror. A black SUV was parked across the street. The windows were tinted. It didn't move. I put the car in gear. Vanessa was wrong. I hadn't ruined everything. I had started something. I thought about the key in the cash box. I thought about the files the monitor had taken. I thought about the look on Judge Holloway's face. I wasn't the practical sister anymore. I wasn't the victim. I drove out of the lot. Passing the black SUV, I didn't look away. I was the witness, and I was just getting started. Thank you for listening to this story. This has been the tale of Claire Peterson and her battle against the shadows of Briar Glen. If you enjoyed this journey into the dark side of inheritance and family secrets, please take a moment to subscribe to Revenge Stories. I would love to know where you are listening from, whether you are driving through the rain in Seattle, sitting in a coffee shop in London, or listening from the quiet of your own home in Sydney. Please leave a comment below sharing your location and your thoughts on Claire's choice. Did she do the right thing by refusing the settlement? Until next time, keep your eyes open and trust your instincts.